Hey everybody, welcome to Mailin' It, the official podcast of the United States Postal Service. I'm your co-host, Dale Parsan.
And I'm Yasmin DeGiulio. In this episode, we're going to talk about how the U.S. Postal Service ensures that letters and packages mailed from here will reach their destinations almost anywhere in the world, and vice versa. We're talking about international mail and the super important role the U.S. plays in mail delivery worldwide. Dale, did you know that 46% of the world's mail is processed and delivered by the U.S. Postal Service?
I thought we usually save our did you knows for later in the episode.
That one's a bonus.
Well, that's pretty incredible, considering the U.S. only has about 4% of the world's population.
Here to tell us more about the Postal Service's international mail operations is this episode's guest, Mary Anderson. Mary is Executive Director of International Postal Affairs at the United States Postal Service. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you.
Mary, tell us a little bit about what you do at the Postal Service. You've been here for 15, 16, 17 years?
That's correct. About 17 years I've been working for the United States Postal Service, and I am currently the Executive Director of International Postal Affairs.
Tell me a little bit more about what exactly your specific job is.
My specific job is I am the United States Postal Service diplomat. So I work with foreign posts and foreign governments worldwide to develop a resolution for any concerns or problems or issues or even new opportunities that the United States Postal Service may have. So I work cross-functionally with many foreign posts, many governments to come to a resolution for us and also ensure that the resolution is done diplomatically without hopefully causing any diplomatic concerns on the way, just saying. And also I work with treaties and bilaterals and working with governments to ensure that parcels and letters are delivered safely and effectively worldwide.
That's great. So, Mary, since we're going to be talking about international mail, can you explain what that is? Is there a standard definition that you use?
The standard definition is, and I guess I'll probably try to look at it as if I was in the United States and I wanted to send a mail or package from North Carolina to California, I shouldn't have to worry about different rules and regulations or how to get it from here to there. I should be able to go to my local post office and mail it and put the correct postage on the parcel or the letter and mail it. And that's what we do on the international side, so that our consumers and our businesses in the United States can send mail and packages worldwide without worrying about all the rules and regulations. They can get it there safely, securely through the Universal Postal Union that we've been a part of since 1800s. And did you know we've been delivering mail internationally since the 1700s?
Wow, wait, 1700s?
Yeah, it's been a long time. And we work cohesively with all of the foreign posts and governments worldwide to ensure smooth transition and smooth transactions so that when you mail that letter or parcel to your friends or family or a business partner around the world, it gets there quickly, accurately, and you know that you can trust the post around the world.
So speaking on, the amount of different parties and entities you guys work with, give me a rough estimate. How many different partners are there out there?
Oh, there's well over 192. There's just a lot. And we work in what's called the Universal Postal Union, because you're wondering, how do you get 192 foreign countries and posts all to agree on one thing or two things or many things? So several times throughout the year, we meet in Bern, Switzerland, and we work with the Universal Postal Union, which is a division of the United Nations. And the Universal Postal Union dates back to 1874. It predates the United Nations. So it's similar to the United Nations, where it's one country, one vote. So it's very important that we work with many countries worldwide to ensure that the U.S. interests are first and foremost, and that we ensure that our citizens of the United States get what they need and be able to mail in parcels around the world. So we go to Bern every year to make sure all the posts and all the mailing is standardized so that you don't have to worry if you're a citizen of the United States or a business in the United States, that if you mail something with the United States Postal Service, it will get delivered worldwide consistently 365 days a year.
I have such a hard time trying to just figure out with my small group of friends what we're going to do this weekend, much less trying to fathom 192 different entities that you're trying to work with. Because you got to consider there's going to be language differences. You're going to have changes in economies from country to country or group to group, different standards in mail. All those things have to be taken into account, right?
That you are so correct, Dale. We have to negotiate all the time with our different countries and territories and posts throughout the union, the Universal Postal Union, because if not, commerce could not grow worldwide without standardization. So if France had different standards than Switzerland, or Switzerland had different standards than the United States, that's why we all get together multiple times throughout the year in Switzerland to make sure that all 192 are using standardized processes and procedures to pick up, sort, and deliver mail worldwide.
I want to go back to something we mentioned earlier. Why does the U.S. handle so much of the world's mail?
The international mail is so large for the United States Postal Service because we are a melting pot. Many of us are from so many different countries. We have our relatives or our parents or our grandparents. Many of us are immigrants to this country. So it is very easy for us to have mail going from the United States to well over 190 countries every single day, 365 days. In the U.S., we make mail easy for people, especially in the rural areas, to access e-commerce worldwide. If you have a web address, you could virtually be worldwide day one. Someone could find you on a search engine and find your website and request your products or services. So we want to make it at USPS very easy for customers and also businesses to be found and be able to ship their goods and services worldwide.
So, Mary, I'm curious, as we're talking more and more about international mail and how much mail comes in and out of the United States, I want to know a little bit about how USPS's membership with the union affects small businesses here in the U.S. I would imagine that with things being so global nowadays, it just increases competition for small businesses here.
It definitely increases competition for small businesses because now the United States small businesses are competing worldwide, especially with the World Wide Web. Small businesses, if you have a product or service to sell, you could be competing with someone in India or someone in China or even someone in Canada selling this exact same product or service you have. So how do you stand out? How do you get that product or service to your consumer quicker, faster, better? And that's what the United States Postal Service is, because with the Universal Postal Union working with us in Switzerland, we're able to standardize the method of delivery and processes so that the small business doesn't have to worry. They just go to their local post office, mail the package, put the proper postage on, and away it goes. We take care of everything else.
What happens with the logistics once the international mail leaves the U.S., and how does it come back into the country and then get distributed?
That's a great question, Yasmin. And so this is, we have several international service centers that we have throughout the United States that distribute and dispatch mail throughout the world. So if I were to mail a parcel from here to Canada, it would first stop at one of our international service centers and get ready before it is exported to Canada. We work in conjunction with Customs and Border Protection for the examination and to access the duties and taxes if there's any owed. And just like, similar to packages you mentioned coming into the United States, how do we handle packages from 192 countries coming into the United States? Well, similar to, I would say, like if you're taking a flight and you're flying from Greenland to the United States, you would have to stop through customs. You can't just get off the plane from Greenland and come right into the United States in Washington, Dulles. You have to go through customs, and all of our packages go through customs, whether they go they're inbound from the United States, coming into the United States, or exporting from the United States. They go through a form of customs, just like a person would.
Is that also any mail that's coming over through sea freight?
That is correct. Everything goes through customs, whether it's sea freight, ocean freight, air freight, parcel, everything goes through customs. Similar to a consumer flying on a plane, you have to go through customs if you stop in a different country and you're flying, or even on a boat or a cruise, you go through customs.
Well, now that you tell me that, I think I have an idea of where at least two of the ISCs might be. I'm going to say Miami and Los Angeles.
You are correct. They're in Miami, Los Angeles, and we have two others. Yasmin, would you like to take a guess?
I'll guess New York and Chicago.
Wow, you guys are superstars. That's wonderful. Yeah, so we have 4 ISCs, and that's where the bulk of our international mail is imported and exported from into the United States.
Great. So with outbound mail, if I want to send something, let's say, to England, I can buy postage at my local post office, right? It's going to be whatever postage that is readily available. What happens to my package when it gets to England?
Oh, when it gets to England, this is where it gets super, super fun, Dale, is that in England, we've already negotiated with Royal Mail, our partner in England that delivers the mail for us. We've already negotiated with them through the Universal Postal Union that they would receive the parcel and deliver the parcel so that there's nothing that the consumer has to do on either end. So we really pay and work with that country and that post to allow those parcels to move freely. And then we also pay terminal dues. So these are fees that are set by the Universal Postal Union that the country responsible for sending an item, in this case would be us, the United States Postal Service, to the country receiving, and that would be England or Royal Mail, that we compensate them for delivering that parcel.
Mary, are there some countries that are not in the Union? And if so, what happens if I needed to mail something there?
There are no countries that are not in the Union. Every single country has signed on to the Union because being part of the United Nations, the Universal Postal Union, every country has seen that the benefit of being part of the Universal Postal Union and transacting commerce with each other, with all 192 posts in countries and foreign territories. We often use bilateral agreements with different countries to handle the mail and deliver the mail. But yes, every single country, every country in the world is part of the Universal Postal Union. That's what makes it so special, Yasmin.
I'm still stuck on small businesses.
You are? What's
So
going on,
indulge
Dale?
me.
Okay. All right. I will. Okay.
As small businesses are able to ship worldwide, do different countries in the Union pay different postal rates, or are the rates pretty consistent from one country to the next?
So it depends, depending on how much volume you're sending, or what we call tonnage, how much weight that you're sending. And it depends on if you're a developing country or more developed country. So England, since we use that as a prior example, is more developed country than some of the smaller countries that are just getting started. Some countries are very, very young. Some are kind of old. They've been around since the 1400s or 1500s. So they have a very sophisticated system. They have a very sophisticated network. But some countries, through different transactions of territories, they're pretty young. So there's a list of developing countries and more developed countries, and it was originally negotiated by the Universal Postal Union in 1960, and it really included more of the heavy manufacturing countries. And it gives the least developed countries an opportunity to really grow and expand and become more of a more developed country.
I remember reading about significant changes to international rates a few years ago. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, the heart of the issue that was very significant to the U.S. Postal Service, and the heart of the issue was that some countries had become more developed since the rates were originally negotiated in 1960. I mean, just think about this for a while. 1960, we had originally negotiated who was going to be a more developed country or who was going to be a least developed country. And I hate to tell you this, Yasmin and Dale, I wasn't around in 1960, but don't tell anybody, okay? That's our little secret. So businesses had grown and manufacturing had grown, and a lot of things had changed since 1960. So the terminal dues are what we would pay a particular country to deliver, or what a developing country would pay us to deliver. A lot had changed in over 60 years. And it was costing the United States as much as $300 million a year in revenue. And it was very unfair for some of the countries that were originally declared least developed in 1960 to have that unfair competitive advantage in 2020 or 2019.
So really, they had much cheaper rates than they should be having based on the strength of their economy and other factors that go into it.
You are correct, because since 1960, they had really worked in their country to really elevate manufacturing, elevate technology, elevate so many different things. They were not least developed maybe they were least developed back in 1960, but in the 20th century and 21st century, they were very developed. So they were paying rates as if they were a small, tiny, tiny country that still is trying to make it. So it was very unfair.
Okay, well, don't bury the lead. How'd all this get resolved?
Oh, did I mention that since 1874, USPS, United States Postal Service, had been part of the Universal Postal Union? And did I mention, Yasmin and Dale, that we were 46%? We are 46% of the world's mail, the largest provider of mail throughout the world. So the administration at the time had threatened to pull out of the Universal Postal Union that we had been part of since 1874. The administration felt it was unfair that the United States Postal Service was carrying this heavy burden for things that were negotiated, treaties that were negotiated since 1960. So the union was very, cautious and upset that the largest post in the world wanted to pull out based on the administration at the time in the White House.
It sounds like this impacted not just the United States, but other countries as well.
It definitely impacted a lot of other countries. So it really reset a total landscape of how small businesses and medium businesses do business worldwide. Now, you may not source from certain countries. You may source more closer to home, or a manufacturer that's right next door in a state, a couple of states over in the United States. You may not source that foreign manufacturer like you did before, because before, we were losing so much money at USPS for the least developed countries.
Did this impact our relationship with the UPU at all when we threatened to pull out?
Oh, yes, it did. We're still making up for that, the administration requesting or demanding that the United States Postal Service pull out of the UPU. A lot of what we deal with at the Universal Postal Union is relationships, because it is very hard to get things done without having a relationship with that particular country, that foreign government, that post, to ensure that the U.S. interests are preserved and move forward. So a lot of the countries took it to heart and were very, very, very agitated that the largest post in the world would want to leave this union that, I'm not sure if I mentioned, that every country and every territory in the world is part of. There's not a country or territory that's not part of the Universal Postal Union. And you have your largest post threatening to leave? Yes, we would say that we ruffled some feathers.
So let's say in a different reality, the administration decided to leave the union. What would have happened?
So if the administration decided to leave the union, the United States Postal Service would have to negotiate bilateral agreements with over 192 countries and foreign territories and posts for them to be able to pick up, sort, and deliver our mail worldwide. So we would not be under the treaty that we're under right now. We would have to go out and individually negotiate with every single country. That would have taken so long. And some countries move faster than others. Some governments move faster than others. But we would have to go out and individually. We also would have to go out and figure out how we're going to receive mail. So it's not just sending mail outbound from the United States to all these different countries and territories. How are we going to receive mail? So that would all be up to a bilateral agreement of how often we receive the mail, how often we deliver the mail, how many times we scan the package, how many times, where do we upload the information? After we scan the package, we would have to figure out, do we send that information to the post or the country or the territory or the government? it really upended our entire existence as a post, being with the Universal Postal Union, that everything would have to be done virtually as if we were starting back in 1874.
My gosh. And if a bilateral agreement with particular countries couldn't be reached, we couldn't mail stuff.
Correct. Let's just say, for example, ABC country or post decided not to do a bilateral with the United States Postal Service for whatever reason. We would have to let our consumers and our businesses know here in the United States that you could not mail to that particular country. Now our consumers and our businesses have the opportunity to mail and ship to virtually everywhere in the world. But if we had to individually negotiate every single bilateral, some countries may have said no, because, like as Yasmin said, and as I mentioned, we ruffled some feathers. So they were not very happy with USPS or the United States or the administration.
Well, I'm glad a resolution was reached.
Yes, a resolution was reached, and it had been since 1960, so it really did need to have a second look. I think after 60, 70 years, maybe you should relook at things. What do you think, Dale and Yasmin?
I think that's about right.
Is there a policy in place now to periodically review and update these classifications?
Yes, there is. Thanks to the administration and thanks to the United States Postal Service, there is now policies to relook at this every year. And we will not have to wait 50 years.
Great.
Yeah. And it benefits the businesses, the small businesses in the United States, because it makes them more competitive worldwide. Before a small business, before we looked at this and before we threatened to pull out of the Universal Postal Union, a small business was not very competitive. Because if you have a foreign business that can sell to your U.S. demographic and be able to ship it, mail it, and produce it for less than $1 and ship it all the way from a foreign country, but the U.S. small business can't produce it, ship it, or mail it under $5 or $10, it made it very, very, very uncompetitive for the small businesses.
Mary, I wanted to shift the conversation a bit to ask you a question I've been really curious about lately. How is international mail delivered to places where there's war or some other conflict, such as what's happening in Ukraine?
So what's happening in Ukraine right now is we deliver the United States Postal Service in every post as part of the Universal Postal Union. As part of our treaty, we deliver mail, whether it's times of peace or times of war or times of disturbances. We always deliver the mail. And one of the things that maybe you've seen throughout the pictures, because we're all much too young to have seen some of these during the wars, World War I or World War II, is you'd often see a soldier sitting at the front lines, reading a letter from home, something, or sharing cookies or baked goods from their sisters or their mothers or their friends. And, everyone really wants that touch from home, that information, that piece of mail. So no matter if it's a conflict or not, we always get the mail there. We get it there safely, and we get it to a certain point. So as like you mentioned in Ukraine, we have a list of postal codes that could change weekly or monthly, depending on the fighting. And we know which areas we can get the mail delivered to that are not in the conflict areas and which areas are accepting mail. And we get updates regularly from Ukraine.
So whenever an area is identified as a conflict area, what happens to that mail that can't be delivered?
If it can't be delivered, we hold it at one of our international service centers. If it's already in transit, we hold it at one of our international service centers. We do not export it. And then also we let all of our consumers and our businesses know throughout the country, throughout the United States, that we cannot mail to that particular country because right now it's unsafe for the letter carriers to go in and deliver that mail.
What about during a global pandemic?
So in a global pandemic, a lot of it, the e-commerce, oh my gosh, e-commerce really just people ordered everything online, including myself. I ordered everything online during a global pandemic. So if the country was open and was receiving mail, we shipped the mail. If the country closed, because we had a lot of countries close over the past 2 or 3 years, they closed their borders. They closed down. They would not let anybody in.
Or there were no flights going.
Correct. There was no flight. So we had to hold that mail at our international service centers and then also work with our retail partners throughout the country to let them know to stop accepting mail for that particular country. Australia is a prime example. They shut their country down. They would not allow foreign visitors to come in or mail or anything. A lot of countries did that during the pandemic. So we work with the Universal Postal Union, and we have messaging that goes back and forth to all of us every day to let us know who is open, who's accepting mail, who's not accepting mail, and so that we can let our retail partners and our business partners know throughout the United States.
Mary, whenever I'm getting ready to mail something here in the U.S. and I'm at one of our kiosks, it asks a certain number of questions around, hey, does your package or letter or whatever I'm mailing, can you certify it doesn't contain X, Y, and Z that shouldn't be put in the mail stream? I understand that we put those prompts in front of our customers within the U.S. How do we make sure that nothing is originating in other countries and making it into our mail system that could put our infrastructure at risk?
That's so we have a system in place with Customs and Border Protection to ensure that anyone that's sending something into the United States, that they send information about that package before it actually lands in the United States. So before it even takes off and from the origin country, the exporting country, and before it's imported into the U.S., we know what's in that package, where it's from, where it's manufactured, and who it's destined to go to in the particular United States. That is very, very important. Similar to when you get on a flight and you may want to go from here to Madrid, Spain. Before you get on that flight, you give your passport to the gate agent. The gate agent sends that information on. Well, guess what? We have the same thing for packages, for parcels worldwide. So parcels coming into the United States, we get a pre-alert of all the information that's in that particular parcel before it lands in. So we can know before it lands whether we need to screen that package or hold it out for customs for further inspection.
On the topic of the UPU and the collaboration that you all do multiple times a year, going to Switzerland, which, by the way, if you need two guests to come along to help out, Yasmin and I are willing to volunteer.
I'll keep that in mind.
So on the topic of the UPU and that collaboration that you all undergo, do we share any of our best practices? We talk a lot about some countries and some entities, really starting out, building out their infrastructure as a country. Do we share items like that, or is it purely just more of the contractual, bilateral agreements, financial sides?
We most definitely share our best practices. One of the best practices that we do on a monthly, daily, weekly basis is we work with our Postal Inspection Service, our Postal Security. Our Chief Barksdale is one of the world's most foremost experts on postal security. Everyone wants to model their postal security after the United States Postal Inspection Service.
That's fantastic.
They lead the work group and the team and the committee on postal inspection worldwide, and they do a phenomenal job. So many of the foreign posts worldwide have modeled their postal inspection after the U.S. Postal Inspection Service.
That's really impressive.
Mary, one of the biggest questions that we get from social media is, where is my package? In the U.S., we know that we can go online to USPS.com and we can see that tracking and all of the scans. Does the same system exist for international packages, both outbound and inbound?
It does. It really does. And so you can scan, and let's say you're shipping a package from here to, we'll pick a country, Lithuania. And you get it to a point, you get the scans from here to Chicago, one of our international service centers, and then it just, you get no more scans after that. So if you call 1-800-ASK-USPS, our wonderful international help desk, they can actually go into the systems and see all the scans from Lithuania to know that it's been received and it's been delivered. So one of the things our team works on at the United States Postal Service is making sure that the Lithuanian post office scans the package and uploads the information quickly. Because even when they scan, we can see the information on our side at USPS, but we're working very hard so that our consumers can see the information on their side. But if our consumers can't see the information, they can always call 1-800-ASK-USPS. And I will say that our call center, our international call center, is award-winning and one of the best in the world and can find that parcel for you. Well, probably while you're on the phone.
That's great.
Mary, it's been great having you on the show with us and teaching us a bit more about international mail. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale, and thank you, Yasmin. This has been so much fun and outstanding. Thank you for having me.
All right, it's time for Did You Know? In this segment, we're going to talk about two little-known but important aspects of the Postal Service. First up is mine, Semi-Postal Stamp Program. Yasmin, are you familiar with that?
That's the program responsible for the breast cancer research stamps, right? I know a little bit about it, but I'd like to hear more.
That's right. The Semi-Postal Stamp Program is a way to provide funding for causes that are considered to be, quote, in the national public interest and appropriate, end quote, as federal law describes it. They cost a little more than regular first-class stamps, but when somebody buys a semi-postal stamp, that extra money goes to the cause. For example, right now the post office has 4 of these for sale. The breast cancer research stamp, which you mentioned, a Save Vanishing Species stamp, an Alzheimer's stamp, and a Healing PTSD stamp. They're each 75 cents.
How do they choose which causes to support?
Well, the bar's pretty high. The breast cancer and Save Vanishing Species stamps were directed by Congress. The Postal Service itself approved the other 2 in a process that began with a request for proposals in 2016 by the Office of Stamp Services. From there, the Citizen Stamp Advisory Committee made recommendations. And finally, the decision rests with the Postmaster General.
I'm guessing these semi-postal stamps have raised a lot of money.
Oh, absolutely. The breast cancer research stamp by itself has raised over $94 million since it went on sale in 1998. The Save Vanishing Species stamp has brought in nearly $7 million since 2011. A total of $1.2 million was raised from the Alzheimer's stamp, and the Healing PTSD stamp has brought in about $1.5 million.
How does the money get distributed?
The Postal Service deducts the actual postage cost from the stamp and then some reimbursement for its own costs from the stamp sale. The rest goes directly to the appropriate federal agency or agencies.
It sounds like a really simple and effective way for people to contribute to causes they believe in.
I agree. Now, Yasmin, what's your Did You Know?
Okay, Dale. I'm sure you've heard of the Depression-era post office murals, but did you know that more than 1,000 post offices still house this historic artwork?
I have heard about these murals. I've even seen some of them over my years working with the Postal Service, but I didn't realize there were so many.
Me neither. They were part of a publicly funded program that placed artwork in federal buildings nationwide. But let me take a step back first. During the Great Depression, Franklin Roosevelt initiated federal programs to jumpstart the economy, including public work projects to create jobs and stimulate cash flow. In addition to other projects, the federal government went on a building spree. About 1,700 new post offices were built in the 1930s. That's more than the total number of post offices that had been built in the 50 years leading up to the Great Depression.
Wow, that's quite an investment. And the murals were a part of that?
They were. As part of the project, up to 1% of a building's construction cost was to be used for decoration. In 1934, the Treasury Department created the Section of Painting and Sculpture to oversee the design and construction of federal buildings, including post offices. The section began looking for artists to create murals and other artwork to be placed in the newly constructed post offices.
I'm guessing they chose post offices so the publicly funded artwork could be easy for the public to see?
That's right, Dale. And unlike some other government-funded art programs during the Depression, money was awarded through a competitive process. Artists submitted anonymous sketches for consideration by a panel of judges that included art critics, fellow artists, and architects. They passed their top choices to the section, which had the final say.
Did they give the artists any guidelines they had to follow, or could they propose whatever they wanted?
Yeah, the section had something very specific in mind. They wanted realistic American scenes painted in a realistic style. They really didn't want any abstract art or symbolic or classical art.
You mean things like murals with winged angels or ancient Greeks and Romans running around in togas?
Exactly. Popular subjects included local scenes from history or from modern industry. Some of the murals celebrated labor, mining, farming, logging, fishing, and manufacturing, for example. And some even celebrated the Postal Service itself.
Weren't some of the murals pictured on postage stamps a few years ago?
Yeah, they were. In 2019, the Postal Service issued the Post Office Murals Forever stamps, featuring 5 of these murals.
Ah, yes, I remember them. I'm glad you brought up the murals, Yasmin. They're an important part of postal history. And with that, we'll wrap up this installment of Did You Know?
Dale, what did you think about our conversation with Mary?
It really blows my mind that 192 countries, the entire world, gets together to agree on something which, in hindsight, seems very simple, mail. But it's a way that everybody can come together and ensure that open communication remains attainable and cost-effective. It blows my mind. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I found that to be really inspiring that so many countries could come together and agree on all these different points around providing mail services throughout the world. I loved her story about continuing to provide mail and keeping people connected even in times of conflict and war and disputes and things like that. I think it's a really important story that kind of goes with our recent episode about military mail and the importance of mail and staying connected with your loved ones even when you're far from home.
It's easy to take something like mail for granted, but then stories like that bring you back and let you know how important it really is.
Definitely. Well, that wraps up this episode of Mailin' It. Don't forget to subscribe to Mailin' It wherever you get your podcasts to make sure you don't miss the next episode. And follow along on Instagram @US Postal Service, Twitter @USPS, and on Facebook.